Hello, shark scrapping fans, YouTubers, and people that are interested in scrapping. Well, I've had a few requests now about how to scrap computer monitors. So I have three different kinds here, right? Our first one is this Sony Triniton. It is a CRT type, so this is one of the older style monitors. And then I've got two flat screen models here. We've got HP, which is, you know, a well-known high-end brand. And then we've got this Sceptra. But what makes this interesting is that this is an HDMI monitor. So we're going to go ahead and scrap the three of these and have a look at how they're different and what kind of fun things are inside for us. Okay, so remember, safety first. I've got some gloves on. I've got in this case, ballistic sunglasses. If it's not sunny, then you want to wear clear, some sort of safety goggles, glasses, shield, something like that. Especially when you're working with a vacuum tube. They don't really explode, but they can shatter if you drop them or that kind of thing. So, you know, just be a little careful. All right, so first thing to do is get this cord off of here, just to get it out of the way. Now that is called a gold connector end or a connector end at Board Sort. You can sell those to Board Sort. You know, just snip it off like this, and you can sell it to Board Sort. Or if you want, you can go after those little gold pins that are inside there yourself. You want to get this off of the insulated copper wire before you put it in with your bucket. This is just a ferrous block. So you can either try to pull the wire out or just snip it off and put this part in with your shred. Generally speaking, there'll be 4 keeper screws. Sometimes it's 2 keeper screws and snaps, you know, locking pins, plastic locking pins. In this case, it looks like it's plastic locking pins. And sometimes there'll be even more screws. But in this case, it looks like it's just going to be the snap pins. There you go. So keep the shell, because you want to cover up this tube again. Now when you're looking at a tube like this part right here is for when you turn off the monitor, that drains the charge off the caps right away. So you know, it's especially with this one, if it's been sitting around for so long, I'm not worried about any of the cap charge. But you know, if you're worried, just cut that part first. Very much like a CRT TV, right? We're going to have a yoke, we're going to have a low-grade board, and then some other hardware on it. Just go ahead and snip the wires to make it easy to get the stuff off. And a lot of times you can just give that a pull and it'll come right, this board will come right off. So you get the board pulled out, and now again we're just going to cut some wires here so we can get it loose. There we go. All right, so we're going to talk about this in just a minute. I'm going to set it aside real quick. Usually there's going to be a real nice degaussing cable on the monitor CRTs. You know, you see them on the TVs all the time. On the computer monitors, that's sometimes even a better degaussing cable. So you definitely want to get that off. Get your insulated copper wire. Now you can see how it's screwed in here, and sometimes you have to unscrew the monitor to be able to get all of the associated cabling out, because sometimes they have the cable like right here. You can see the degaussing cable is running under that screw. So my options are to cut it and try to pull it out, or unscrew the monitor. I'm going to just cut it. It should pull out clean when I cut it. What I'm trying to do, you know, if I unscrew the monitor, then I've got to screw it back down again, which is, you know, not a big deal, because the reason I do that is I want to be able to put the monitor back in the housing so that I can take it to the transfer station so that it goes into the proper recycling system. Where I live, the transfer station will take these. They have a separate place for them. They've gone back and forth. It's like, for a while it was a separate place, then it was just throw it in with the trash, and now they've found someone that'll take them again, so now they're in a separate place again. So go ahead and get you loosened up. Got some tie wraps here holding it in place. Okay, see they got that extra loop up there. And let's just go ahead and I think I should be able to just cut this. You can see that's nice copper there. Now I should be able to take my screwdriver here and just get that out of there. Hopefully. If not, it's no big deal. I can always unscrew it if I have to. There we go. There we are. Yeah, we'll make it easy on ourselves here too. There we go. All right, so the degaussing cable you can see is wrapped in tape, and so the stripping process for this is you can either, if you have a mechanical stripper or your handmade stripper, you can cut the tape and peel it off, or you can try to unwind it. It tends to be pretty sticky kind of tape, so unwinding can be a little bit problematic. All right, now we have a classic CRT yoke, usually 2 keeper screws, and in this case it's a Phillips head. Check these because they can be stainless. In this case it's stainless. And yeah, we've got another one down here. There we go. There we go. And we'll check this one again. It's probably stainless. Yeah, stainless. If the first one was, the second one is probably stainless too. All right, now this stuff comes off. That's just rubbish. And let's get this last keeper brother off of here. All right, no rubbish. The yoke should just give it a little spin and it should twist off. There we go. Now you saw that stuff popping off of there. That's just glue and paste and stuff, but that's why you want to have eye protection on. There you go. Also, when you're doing this part, that's when you have the greatest chance of breaking the stem, and that's another reason why you want to have gloves and eye protection on. All right, now we have the yoke. The yoke is going to have copper, and you see there's these copper coils, and then there's this ferrous. So a lot of times you can just take a hammer to this and bust it all up. Sometimes with a couple of snips in the right place, it'll just open itself up. Every one is going to be a little bit different, so however works best for you. Now, this part, there's nothing more that we can do with this. So I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to do the board, and then we'll close this up. So low-grade board, much like you would see on the TVs. And you just go ahead and get your wires cut. Now in this case we have a nice little circuit card here, and that's going to be a mid-grade with my yard. Unfortunately, those are not gold fingers. So there's a nice little surprise. Sometimes with the computer monitors you will get a mid-grade board in there, so be looking for that. More insulated copper wire. I don't get too worried about how close I get on getting all of the insulated wire. Some people really want to get every little bit of insulated copper wire they can, which is fine, you know, absolutely go for it. I go through a lot of computers and things of that nature, so for me there's no shortage of insulated copper wire, and time becomes the critical factor for me. But that's just me. If you don't have a lot of volume, then it behooves you, I love that word, behoove, it will behoove you to take a little more time and get as much value as you can off of each item that you're scrapping. Okay, let's open this one up, see what we got here. Tin shred. And another mid-grade board. Go ahead and unscrew these. Just like the TV, each one's going to be a little different. There's the basics are always there, but then there's little nuances, manufacturer and model, and so you know, it's what it is when you get into it. More tin shred. All right, so here we have a nice, yeah, I can probably go low grade, mid grade with my yard. My yard only has high, medium, and low grade for boards. So while that is, the bad side of that is, you know, higher grade things like telecom and such, I don't get anything more for them. But because that's the way they do it, they're pretty flexible on what is a mid-grade board. An aluminum heatsink here on a set with a nut. Let's see if I can hold it with my finger. Yeah. There we go. So aluminum heatsink, always check them, but you know, you can tell after a while by the color and the feel and the weight. Nice little mid-grade board here. Now, you might want to go ahead and pull these ICs. Just be familiar with the way your yard works. If I leave at least one of these on, I can probably still get away with making this a mid-grade board with my yard. But you need to know your yard and how they would rate these things. Okay, get the rest of this wire off of here. Here's another ferrous block on this ribbon wire. Go ahead and get that while we're at it. Okay. And another block. Probably should have just gone the other way with that one, shouldn't I? There we go. Okay. Insulated copper wire. Yeah, this is just a case of going through now and snipping wires. Now, this kind of wire is usually a tin-plated copper, so you can put that in with your insulated copper wire, or you can keep it separate as a tin-plated wire. Ferrous block. Another ferrous block, insulated copper wire. Now these clips are frequently brass, so you'll want to check those and see if those are brass, if you're into collecting little bits of brass. So on a typical board of this nature, you're going to have aluminum heat sinks. Sometimes you'll have copper heat sinks like this one, right? So check to see what the heat sinks are made of. You'll have some transformers, at least, you know, one. If you separate transformers, then you'll look for the transformer. There's some nice coils there that you look like that'd be pretty simple to unspool, so that would be some copper wire. This copper wire here is very easy to unspool that. Let's see if we can break that off real quick for you. So what's really cool about these guys is, and if I can do this real quick, I will. Sometimes they want to get a little fiddly on you, but so there's plastic and ferrous. All right. Get the plastic off of there. Pull that ferrous out of there. Now you have this nice spool. You can put that spool on a screwdriver and just pull that copper wire right off. There'll be 2 pulls on it. There you go. Here's the second one. Now that's just trash, but you get a nice little ball of copper wire, and that's a real easy one to unspool. All right, nice little ball of copper wire there. The IC chips are can be worth pulling, so you might want to pull a couple of the IC chips. Remember, with a low grade board, It doesn't matter if it breaks up, if you pull a few things off of it. Low-grade board is low-grade board, so go ahead and pull what you want to pull. Aluminum heat sinks, copper heat sinks, the FETs if you want to get the copper off the FETs, the transformers. Sometimes these black boxes have relay switches in them that'll have silver contacts, so you might want to take a look at those. You got a fuse here if you're into collecting fuses. Look to see if they have any tantalum capacitors, the old style epoxy dip tantalum capacitors. Otherwise, you know, low-grade board. So however much time you have to work on it, go ahead and get what you can from it. All right, now then, with that done, we're going to close this back up again. And we're closing it up to avoid breaking this and, you know, just making a mess, but otherwise creating a hazard. All right, and we just put the shell back on, line it back up. Here we go. And we kept the screws aside, so now we can just screw these back in. Don't forget, if you've got a torque setting on your screwdriver, on some sort of power screwdriver, that you set it on a low torque so you don't strip out the plastic threads. All right, this monitor is now ready to go back to the transfer station. Well, not back to the transfer station. It was never at the transfer station, but this monitor can now go to the transfer station. That's all I can do with it. All right, so now we're into the flat screen monitors. This is the HP. One of the first things that you'll want to do is remove the stand. That's usually going to be a few screws in the back. Maybe 2, maybe 4. That solves that problem. And that lets us get at the third screw. Yeah, you know, they're all going to be a little bit different at just figuring it out. Okay, now, once we have the screen, the base off, the next thing is look for any screws that might be along the seam holding it together. If you don't see any screws holding it together, then look for a place where there might be a little spot where you can put your flathead screwdriver in and give it a twist. And then you run your screwdriver along the edge, and you'll see how the screen starts to pop off. Some of them require a little more encouragement than others, but once they start popping off, then you can just finish pulling off the screen. Now try not to break this, because again, we're going to cover this. You may want to keep the screens, if it is a LCD monitor, for the indium tin oxide. I'm still in between on whether or not I'm going to keep that, but with larger screens like this, I just take them to the transfer station. The smaller screens, I keep. The smaller LCDs I'm keeping because they don't take a lot of space. But anything that's monitor size, TV size, I'm just taking it to the transfer station and being done with it. Okay, now, in this case, we've got the speakers right here, so let's just go ahead and pull those. Those can go with tin shred. If you want to, you can try to pull the magnets off of the speaker. I find that I've got plenty of magnets, so especially with smaller speakers, I don't mess with it. I just put them in with the tin shred. Alright, and we got some insulated copper wire here. Next will be, how is the computer, you know, set into the frame, the base frame. Sometimes it'll be screwed down via an internal metal. Sometimes it'll just come right out with plastic snaps. This one appears to be screwed in. Now you also want to watch, because sometimes the connectors along here, you know, like this VGA connector, will have those thumb screws, and sometimes those thumb screws can be the culprit that holds the stuff from coming out real easy. So if this one does not have any thumb screws, that should not be a problem. So we should be able to get the screen out of here. Oh. So it wants to come out of the plastic frame like that. And frequently what will happen is when you take off the outer screws or you peel the casing apart, this will come off anyway to reveal the back. So again, each one's going to be a little different. So you just have to, you know, get a feel for it when you're taking it apart. Right, here's a tin-coated copper wire. Set that over here. We're going to pull off this tape and see what we're dealing with here. I just throw this metallic tape in with my tin shred. These tell me that there are most likely, especially when you see pink and white, but any of these pastel-y kind of wire colors, tells me that there's probably tiny little tubes in here, and I want to be careful not to break those. So this is not a, you know, a true LCD type. This is going to be some sort of little tiny tube, and you don't want to break those because there's mercury inside of those tubes. All right, now we've got screws on the side here that we need to get out. Come off. There we go. Now, when there's a board in here, that's what we're really going after. So just cut these wires for the time being so you can get at the board. All right, now we can separate these. I'm going to set the screen over here for a minute. You can see we have two boards. As you would imagine, one's going to be a power board, one's going to be the control or processing board. Alright, that's a nice board there. Mid-grade, my yard. Even if I nip one of these, hey, how'd you like that, my European and Australian friends, huh? Even if I pull one of these flat packs and one of these oscillators, this will still be a mid-grade for my yard. Insulated wire. Don't forget to remove the ferrous block. And there's our power board. Pull off the rest of the insulated copper wire. Again, each of these are going to be a little different. Transformer, aluminum heat sinks, so there's some aluminum heat sinks if you want to go after those. There's a little copper spool there if you want to go after that. So again, whatever you have the time and inclination to go for on the low grade board. Metal shell, I'm going to throw that in with my tin shred. Although some of the screws might be needed to close this thing up tight, I'm not worried about that, because if all else fails, if the plastic snaps, won't hold it together, I put a little duct tape on it and we're good to go. So there's tin shred. All right, now with the monitor, this piece is going to be covering what's called a finger strip board. So let's go and get inside those. Those are smaller screw heads. Let's see if this one will do it. No. Let's see if you'll do it. No, I need to get my really tiny screw. All right, it's always good to keep a small toolkit handy. They come in all kinds of shapes, sizes, with a number of different screw heads. Because you're going to need these tiny little Phillips heads, sometimes the flat heads, sometimes the Torx, for some of the electronics that you're going to be going after. You might also just be able to pry that up and break it, right? We're not talking about that big a screw. These are teeny tiny little screws and pretty thin sheet tin here. So if you wanted to and you didn't have the necessary tools, hey, you know, just give it a try and pry it up. But these kits are not very expensive. You can get them on eBay. I used to get them at Radio Shack, and well, of course we can't do that anymore. All right, so there's tin shred, finger strip board. Now again, these are going to come in different shapes and sizes depending upon the manufacturer. As you can see, the gold flashing on there. That's the gold finger part, why they call it a finger strip board. Now sometimes this board may only be a little bit thicker than the finger strip with a few little components on it. This one is a little bit larger with a few more components on it. What can you do with it? Well, you might want to cut off the gold parts, the gold flashing parts, for gold recovery, or just sell that as a mid-grade board. Okay, now that's as far as I'm going with this monitor, with this screen, because inside here there's going to be really tiny little tubes, and I don't want to mess around with those and potentially break those. If it's an LED type monitor, and I'm thinking perhaps the next one is an LED monitor, we can go a little bit further. But with this one, I'm leaving it just like this. I'm not going to mess around with that anymore. We just put this back into the plastic shell. You can either, I did it backwards, right? If I want to make it look pretty. Oh, I almost forgot something. I'm glad I looked at that. There's another little board right here. This is the board. This is going to be another low-grade board. Oops. Where the buttons were on the side, so you've got little tactile switches here. These are so tiny, they're not worth messing with, but on the larger ones, there might be a tiny little dollop of silver inside the tactile switch. Otherwise, low-grade board. Put it with the screen out if you want. It really doesn't matter. And snap this back into place. All right. Now that's ready for the transfer station. Well, sometimes the plastic snaps have broken, and so you may need to put a little piece of duct tape on it just to hold it together until you get it to the transfer station. Again, you need to know what your local ordinances and recycling requirements are. It might be that you just throw these in the trash. I could, because of where I live, I could just throw these in the trash. They'll take them. But I prefer to take them to the transfer station so that they're separated and I believe handled in a different way with the recycling. So here we have a newer computer monitor. You can see it's no longer square. It is rectangular. It's HDMI. It is for Windows 8 compatible. So it's not that new, but anyway. If we look at the back, we can see these ports, and we see that the thumb screws here are not connected to the frame, so that's not going to be a problem. We don't have to mess with taking that off. I've already busted off the plastic stand. So with this one, we have screws here. Let's go ahead and get those out of the way. And we have screws in the corners. That corner. Now the screws are black, matching the black plastic, so they wanted to make it a little bit difficult for us. All right, that's it for the screws. So now, let's see what happens if we start running our screwdriver along the seam and popping clips. You know, it's just a question of run your screw up, your flathead screwdriver until it won't go. Give it a little twist, you'll hear a little click. And that's one of the little, one of the little plastic clips opening up. All right. Again, I recommend that you try not to break the frame yet, because you may want to use this to close up the screen. Now let's see, this screen may just come right out now at this point. There we go. Now we're going to set the screen aside for a minute. Here's the plastic shell. Board will be underneath it here. Get this tape out of the way. Get the insulated copper wire out of the way. Now here's the tactile switches on this one. Alright, so you can see these are a little bit bigger. I still don't think these are big enough to be worth a big deal, if there's any silver in here at all. But if you cut off that top, and the little copper, or that little plastic thing that looks like copper, comes out, and then what you'll see is right down inside there, let me get closer to you, right down inside there is where you'll see a little tiny dollop of silver on the push button switch. I used to save these religiously, but now I'm going through so many computers and my time is so limited that I don't even mess with them anymore. That just goes into my low grade bucket. For any of you who are new to my channel, when you hear me say I'm going through so many and I don't have time for it, I get about a pallet of computers every week. I have an arrangement with one of the local yards. I buy from them. So I break down anywhere from, well, so literally my range has been, literally, inappropriate use of the word, but anyway, my range so far, the lowest has been 325 pounds. The highest was 1,200 pounds of computers. So it's a pallet of computers every week. That's why I don't have, when I say I don't have a lot of time, it's because I'm going through all those computers each week. That's a lot of computers that have to get broken down, and so it's just if I spent time going into all of the details of every little piece, I would get more value, but I would never be able to get done all the computers before I pick up the next pallet load. So You know, it's just one of those business decisions to keep things moving. Plus, I don't have a lot of storage space. I need to keep stuff moving. Okay, sheet metal frame out of the way. 2 boards again, processor board, power board, because I have a simple brain. Again, you know, look at this power board compared to the power board from the older HP. So they've gotten smaller. Still have similar components, right? FETs with heat sinks and transformers and some copper coils. So they've gotten smaller. And then of course, these are way small compared to the CRT monitor's power board. So anyway, power board. And all right, so again, that's going to be a low grade, excuse me, a mid-grade board for my yard, mid-grade board. You need to understand how your yard does the board grading, right? Some yards, they say if they can see through it, they can see light through it, it's a low grade. Other boards say if it's brown on either side, it's a low grade. It depends on the components that are on it, how much metal's hanging on it. So the more you work with your yard, the more you'll come to understand how they grade the different boards. And don't ever be afraid to ask, because 99% of the people at the yard want to help you learn and understand how to grade things, because it makes it easier and faster for them as well. All right, mid-grade yard board for my yard. Insulated copper wire here. Okay, so now the finger strip board on this type of screen is going to be underneath of this tape. So remember, in the previous model, it was underneath of a piece of shred steel. In this case, it's underneath a piece of rubbish tape. And these are still pretty small screws. All right, so we get this done. Get these tiny little screws out. Now here's our finger strip board. In this case, you can see it's smaller than the previous one we did. And when we pulled the tape off, it pulled off some of the gold fingers. So if you want, you can, you know, cut off those ends there and try to save the gold from those. Again, I don't mess with it. It's kind of too much work. Pull off this gold connector end. You can see the gold that's there. Throw those in with gold connector ends. And there's a nice little gold finger strip board. There's a few components on this side of the board. So if you wanted to save the whole board for gold processing, you'd need to take off all of those components. Maybe you cut it in half so it takes up less space. Maybe you just trim off the line that has the gold. Or maybe you just throw it in with your mid-grade boards. Entirely up to you, as is all of this. Well, here's the comparison layout between the 3 monitors. You can see that the newer monitors give us a lot less stuff, right? Less waste, less material. Here's the insulated copper wire. Not a whole lot, but there's some there. You've got low-grade board, mid-grade board, the finger strip board, which would be a mid-grade unless you do something with it, and the tin shred. A little bit older monitor, and so you've got a little more bulk and waste to it here. You've got a larger finger strip board, but again, that's all going to be dependent on models and stuff. But the power board's a little bigger, and you still have, you know, mid-grade boards in there, and a bit of waste, but you know, some tin, right? And then the CRT old monitors, of course, there's going to be a lot of material in there. You've got all the waste of the plastic and the CRT, the tube, cathode ray tube. You've got a pretty good chunk of insulated copper wire because there was just a lot more electronics, older style. Great big low-grade board, but there's plenty of components on there that are fun to pull off. The Crt Yoke, which has got probably more value than all of that stuff, right? And the mid-grade boards as well. I have more e-waste specific videos at this link to my e-waste playlist, where you can learn all kinds of fun stuff about scrapping e-waste, because I love sharing it. And let me know what else you'd like to see in the comments so that I can put it in the playlist. Have a great day.